What's up guys, Camry David here with what's actually my first ever kart race. This kart race took place at SpeedSportz Racing Park in New Caney, Texas, and is a 1-hour Ironman endurance race. The Ironman means that there is only one driver over the whole course of the hour. Now there is no practice or qualifying in this event, so really it's just a random grid order. In this particular race, I ended up starting in P4, which is actually a pretty good spot to start. Unfortunately, a lot of the guys that started behind me were actually pretty quick, so I got swarmed pretty badly at the start, and I had to go defensive. As you can see on the left side, number 5 is poking his nose around trying to find a way by. Now this is a configuration of the track that I've never driven before, so it takes me a few laps to kind of get comfortable. And you can see as the lap goes on that number 8 is kind of starting to hold me up and back me into the rest of the pack. Now a few laps later you can kind of see that the leaders of the race are now kind of long gone, and now it's just us. Luckily, I see an opening at the double apex on the inside, so kind of squeezed my nose in there with a little bit of contact, but got the move done. At this point, with some clean air, I kind of put my head down and focused on just getting good consistent laps and try to slowly chip away time to the leaders. We ended up hitting lapped traffic actually pretty early in the race, and so I kind of managed to get by them really quickly most of the time, but at one point there was a huge crowd coming up, and so I decided it's probably a good idea, instead of losing time here, to just take a pit stop and get some clean air again. The rules for these pit stops are actually pretty interesting, so you're required to come to a full stop at the beginning of the pit lane, and then drive through the pit lane and stop again at the end. And that's basically your pit stop, and you're required to do 3 of those throughout the race. Because I had taken a pit stop so early in the race, you see I kind of drop a lot of positions because a lot of them are passing me, but I figured, hey, I lose out in the short term, but in the long term I might actually win out. And lo and behold, I wasn't the only one that had this idea, because just a few laps later, the guy that started P2 did the same thing, and I actually ended up catching up to him, which meant that my pit stops actually worked. That clean air allowed me to get a little bit more time to catch him when he came out of the pits. I started to notice pretty quick that I had a little bit of pace on him, but he was still quick enough that it was difficult to find a line to get around him. In hindsight, what I should have done was minimize my time loss by tucking him behind and just waiting for the right opportunity. Instead, I was too eager, too impatient, and started poking my nose on the inside line. He saw that, and his reaction was to be more aggressive. Over the next few laps, we actually ended up fighting pretty hard, as you can see here. And by this point, I was starting to get impatient because I knew I was losing a lot of time. This ended up leading to a really critical mistake towards the end of the lap. As I was coming in, I took the inside and jumped off the curb in just the wrong way, and it ended up actually spinning me around and losing me a ton of time. And as you can see, there's this one kart that actually passed me. He was actually the kart that was really trying to get by me on lap 1. Luckily, I was able to get the kart turned around pretty quickly and put my head down to try to make up for a ton of lost time. After that spin, I really just focused on churning out laps and making sure they were all very consistent. Once I came upon traffic again, I took the exact same strategy as last time. I pitted right away. At the beginning of my 3rd stint, I actually ended up getting passed by my good buddy Danny. I was pretty disoriented at this point in the race because I wasn't sure what position I was in or exactly how many pit stops everyone had taken, so I took the conservative route and just assumed that I was fighting him for position. In reality, he was really probably a lap or so ahead because he had only taken 1 pit stop. He told me after the race that he had a pretty good kart with a decent amount of power, so it really made it difficult for me to catch up in the straights. Regardless, I tried my best to kind of cut the time in the corners, and I was able to actually keep up with him until he dipped into the pits. And at this point, assuming that it was for position, I was like, oh, this is good. I passed him. Not too long after, I took my 3rd and final pit stop after I hit traffic again. But this time, I was actually almost held up by a kart that was already in the pits. Not quite sure what was happening here, but they seemed to let me around, so I didn't really lose too much time. Now I knew that this was going to be very critical because now I could make up for all those positions I lost in the pits and everyone else still had yet to pit. This last stint actually ended up being more than 40 laps, but to be honest, I had no problem doing this. I felt like I was really in the groove. I was really encouraged when I ran up on kart 19, and I realized that, hey, this is the guy that I was battling when I spun out, so really I had made up for a ton of lost time. I was much more careful this time. I wanted to make sure that I could get by him cleanly and safely so that I didn't lose any more time than I needed to. As we were going down the front straight and through the first chicane, I was really thinking about how is he going to defend this hairpin turn. He ended up showing me the inside, so I took the liberty of going down the inside, cleanly and safely past him, and didn't see him the rest of the race. Getting close to the end of the race, I actually ended up passing kart 8 again for P3. That was actually the kart that I had passed early in the race that was holding me up. And then finally I came back up on Danny again, and this is when I realized that I had not actually passed him before. I was a little bit confused at this point because I wasn't sure if he was a lap behind or if this is actually for position, but again I took the conservative route and I said, okay, I probably need to pass him to win this race. Luckily for me, we hit traffic right when we got to the first hairpin. I was able to use the traffic as kind of like a roadblock to hold him to the right side while I passed on the left. This worked like a charm and I got by him no problem. Danny later told me after the race that he was actually having issues towards the end of the race with his kart's reliability, and he had slowed down a little bit just to make sure the kart got to the end of the race. He told me he regretted doing this because he didn't even know I was close by behind, and when he saw me fly by, that's when a switch turned on and he really tried to catch up again, but unfortunately the issues with his kart made it impossible for him to catch back up. In the end, I ended up finishing P2 behind kart number 5, who was actually the person that passed me when I had spun out. So I was really kicking myself for making that mistake. Overall, I was very happy with P2 though. I put everything on the line, and I felt like other than that spin, that was the best result I could have gotten. Thank you for watching, guys. I plan to do more races in the future and make more videos like this, so if you like that, please like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to leave me any feedback in the comments because I would like to make these videos better too.